Hi, this is Katie Garth, your local Feldenkrais practitioner, and today we are going to do a lesson on activating the arches of the feet to help support balance and standing and moving and everything else we do in life. So you won't be able to see my head, but I want to show you something in the feet for a moment. So when my arches are activated, I'm a little bit ready for movement. You can see that my palms turn out. When my feet are flat, it's also very useful for certain movements, but I get a little bit droopy. So I want to talk about the difference today between activating and deactivating. So I'm going to have Kevin come in now and lay down to start the lesson. So please get your mats ready and lie down on the floor. If you're more comfortable in a chair, go ahead and sit there, and I will be coming in periodically to show how to sit in the chair the right way as we go through the lesson, just in case you need to modify. All right, here's Kevin. All right, so begin in seated, please. We're just going to do a quick anatomy lesson and an interactive scan in seated. So arrange your legs however you wish so that you can touch or look at one of your feet. And it doesn't matter which one. Just pick a sole and look at the sole of your foot, so the bottom of your foot. And whatever's easy. So we're going to identify some basic anatomy for a moment. Some of it will be tricky, some will be easy. So find your heel. And could you please begin to touch your heel of the foot you're examining? To use the scientific word, please begin to palpate your heel a little bit as you push into the tissue. Think of having x-ray fingers and trying to figure out what's under there. You might know there's the calcaneus, the heel bone, and some cartilage. See what you can feel in the heel. And then go to the ball of the same foot. You could go to the big toe, the heavy joint at the head of the first metatarsal. So now you're at the big toe. And again, rub that joint with your fingers. You can roll that joint between your fingers a little bit. Get a sense of the size and the shape and also the density of this part of the body. And then would you take your fingers over to your fourth toe, to your ring toe, and would you walk your fingers up your little ring toe until you get to the head of your fourth metatarsal. Metatarsal is just like a palm bone of the foot. So find your way from the ring toe to the fourth metatarsal, and would you get to know that joint now by touch? There's a lot of things that are happening here if we think of it from a neurological function of touching our own feet here. So one is that the fingers are gathering information about your foot, and the other is that your foot is gathering information about your fingers. So would you think of your intelligent head of your fourth metatarsal, feeling your fingers approach it in different ways? In fact, lighting up in your brain awareness capacity of the region of ourselves, the fourth metatarsal that we don't think about very often. And we're going to call these 3 points the tripod of the foot. Would you please find your tripod on your other foot? So take a moment to get comfortable touching your other foot now. Start with finding the heel. There's a great little heel quiz. I probably won't give you the answer, but it's something to think about for a moment. So do you know which half of your heel, the inside or the outside, is bone and which half is cartilage? Can you discover that with your fingers? One of them is not bone. So it doesn't matter in terms of your success with the lesson whether you know the answer, but I just love that you're thinking about it now with your fingers, trying to figure it out. Go ahead and find the head of the first metatarsal, the heavy thing we often call the ball of the foot now. And again, just explore the boundaries of that region. The sensitivity, if there's a little pain there, just notice. Notice the places that make you feel really nice when you push into it a little bit. And then walk your fingers over to the fourth toe and really come at it from the toe, from the fourth toe back, so that you're sure you've got the head of the fourth metatarsal here. And that's the tripod of this foot. So when you think you've got a good idea of the 6 parts of the feet now, the tripod on each foot, let's take a moment to review. So please come to stand. So stand on your tripods. And I'd like you to take just a moment in standing to sense your tripods here. So you can position yourself on your mat or off your mat, wherever you're comfortable. Close your eyes if you're really at ease with standing with the eyes closed. Sometimes that can make us more sensitive to tactile information. And then feel how the floor relates to your feet. And you can feel how your feet relate to the floor. And notice if you have a sense of having more weight on one foot than the other. There might be some history here about yourself that you always know that you're heavier on one foot or on the other, but sense how it is right now. Is it equal distribution? Is it more to one side than the other? Is it generally more to the front of your feet? Or to your both feet or one foot? What about the back of your feet? Do you feel more weight there? And it's really interesting culturally the kind of associations we make with our weight. Are you more on the front of your feet, up on your toes, so to speak? Are you on the back toward your heels? What tends to be your default? See if you can sense that. And maybe it's different between the 2 feet. And then if you think of one foot and the tripod of that foot, could you divide in your mind where the weight is among these 3 areas? So maybe it's 50% on the heel and 25 and 25 on the front. Maybe it's completely different. So think of that one foot and just try to come up with a sketch of where you think the weight is on those 3 areas. And then do it on the other foot. Notice if there are some differences. If overall you feel like you may use the outside edge of one foot more and the inside edge of the other, or something like that. And then just take a few moments to walk on your 2 feet. So maybe just circle your mat area or walk just a little bit as you think of your tripods. See what information you can gather. There's tons of information coming in with just simple walking, but think, how do the 3 areas of your feet meet the floor? Whatever you can gather with just a few steps. And when you're ready, go ahead and make your way back to your mat and lie down. Get really comfortable lying on your back here. And let your legs be long if you can. If you need to stay seated or have the legs bent and standing, that's also fine. Have some space between the legs either way. Let your arms be at your sides. Make sure you're comfortable. While we do this, take a moment just to sense yourself in this orientation to gravity, with the weight of your feet now supported by your heels on the floor or your feet on the floor. And do the toes point toward one side, or do they point up toward the ceiling? Do the feet feel of equal heaviness? Does the floor feel of equal hardness? Or are things more interesting when you look closely? Move your attention up your body and sense where your legs are lying. If the legs are standing, just sense them in space. Sense the orientation and the space behind your knees. Where do your kneecaps point in the room? What kind of shape do the knees make? Supposedly the legs lie long and flat, but for everyone, even if the legs are standing, there's some space behind the knees. And for almost everyone, if you sense very closely, that space is not equal. Sense the buttocks resting on the floor, the back of your pelvis. Notice where the weight is on the back of your pelvis. Is it a quiet, flat, simple kind of relationship? Pelvis floor, like you have a book lying back there? Or is it a little tilted or twisted? You might find the heavy parts of the pelvis are significantly off to one side or another. That's possible. Sense your lower back, the one side of your lower back and the other. Your sense of the height and the length of the arches left and right on the lower back. Sense the weight of your chest and your shoulders on the floor. Sense the subtle or not so subtle differences between the one side of your body and the other side of your body. And notice how you arrange the arms. The feeling of the collar region, your neck, the weight of your head. And would you please bend your knees and bring the soles of your feet to stand for a moment, if they're not already there. And I'd like you to take a moment to find a really secure place to rest your feet. The sense of your feet being approximately the width of your pelvis or the width of your hips, under your knees. If it's comfortable for you, you may have the legs bent so the feet are right under the knees. If they're not straining to bend that much, of course. And in this situation, would you gently press into the floor with your feet? Push your feet into the floor. We could say push the feet backwards because you're facing the ceiling. So push your feet a little backwards into the floor. Just enough to feel the bones of the feet engage with the floor more firmly. Softly and slowly, press the floor and relax the extra weight, feeling how the feet manage that pressure. Where does the pressure go in your 2 tripods? And is there something you can do with the use of yourself to look for symmetry as you increase the pressure? And a coordinated timing of increase. So gently press and then stop pressing. and press and stop pressing. You can let that pressure, you can let that little bit of movement have implications higher up. You can let your hips hear what you're doing with your feet, or let your pelvis respond with a tiny bit of a shift or a rock. Not pushing so hard yet that it has to lift. And as you get more symmetrical, or as you pursue this idea of equalizing the amount of pressure, let's start to go and use a little more pushing backwards. And if something goes down, something else must come up, right? So push the feet down hard enough so that the pelvis lifts just a little bit. And then gently and slowly and smoothly put your pelvis down, release the effort, perhaps take a breath or two, and then again push the feet and lift your pelvis. And notice, does your pelvis come into the air in a very straightforward line toward the ceiling, or does it deviate here and there? With a sense of unintended turning, or the whole pelvis shifting a bit left or right, just see what you can do. Listen closely to the weight shifts in the feet, to the kind of parts you use to make this very simple and a little more symmetrical. Let the feet be relaxed, let the toes rest. And as you settle into this movement, doing it many times, sense what kind of weight you put on one heel and the other heel as you lift your pelvis. What kind of weight do you put on the ball of one foot, the head of the first metatarsal, and the other ball of the other foot? And what can you sense? How do you relate to this perhaps unusual area I've asked you to get interested in, the head of the fourth metatarsal? What kind of pressure happens over there? Is it possible for you to feel the pressure increase? Or is this more of an area where you don't feel very much yet? And with all of this, would you take a moment to simply notice the weight of your pelvis and the minimal or easy height that you've chosen to lift your pelvis? How high do you go without a lot of effort? Remember this for later. We'll see how it changes as we help organize the legs and the feet and back. Place your pelvis down, lengthen your legs for a moment, take a rest. Tune some attention into your breathing. And as you breathe, would you have the idea of an easy fullness coming into your lower abdomen, to the abdominal expansion in all directions? Of course, the belly pushes a little forward as we breathe in, for most people. You can allow that to happen, but there's also a quiet expansion in the back of your body toward the tissue of the lower back. And there's some expansion left and right at the waistline. And as the tissue moves to accommodate the expanding lungs, there's even some liquid, some soft tissue pressure down into the hip joints and into your pelvic floor. Could you sense, or hallucinate that you could sense, that you could breathe down into the roots of your legs? That you can maybe yield a little bit the habitual holding of the pelvic floor. See if you can relax a little bit underneath of yourself there, and maybe even feel or imagine you could feel a soft, gentle little bit of expansion straight down between your legs as you inhale. And then once again, bend your knees and stand your feet. Take a couple of moments or a couple of breaths to look for the same kinds of things around this three-dimensional kind of thing of the abdomen being alive to the breath, the shape of things changing as you stand the feet like this. Feel for any new information. And then would you, keeping that softness of the breath, keeping the background of your attention on this ongoing, easy feeling in the pelvis and hips, would you let your left knee tilt a little bit to the left, to the outside, and then bring it back up to standing? Make it a small and comfortable movement. give your body permission to yield to that shift of weight, to let the back and the pelvis, maybe even your back and belly, follow your left knee somewhat to the left, just to make that very, very easy. And again, it can be small, and then it comes back to stand again easily. As it does this, tune into the sole of your left foot. Sense how you're peeling the inside edge of your foot from the floor as the knee goes out to the side, placing more weight on the outside edge. And would you allow something to emerge in the ankle, in the area of your ankle, to slightly enhance that peeling? So from the very beginning of tilting the knee, would you also lift the inside edge of your foot, or slightly increase the arch of the foot? But you keep the foot more or less relaxed. You just see that the beginning of tilting the knee to the outside also lifts the arch away from the floor. And you can come all the way back and relax the arch. You can relax the ankle, pause for a moment, and do that again. If you're finding that because you're doing this on a different surface of the foot, on a smaller surface of your foot, that you start to lose friction with the floor, you can find a material that will reduce the slippage, so to speak, and create some friction. I like to use a dish towel or something like that to create a little friction under the feet. Sometimes you can just take off your socks and that will also help. Or you can change the surface you lay on, maybe laying on a wood floor if you can for just a moment. Now try the following. Could you minimize the movement of the knee and still do some activity in the lower leg, in the ankle, very softly in the foot, of actively lifting or increasing the arch? And with each movement, see if you could sort of, for yourself, do less and less migration of the knee and more of a kind of shifting, a soft shifting in the ankle, letting the toes just stay long as passengers attached to your foot. And you won't go as far onto the outside edge. There's more of a limit now because we're asking your ankle and the lower leg to, at some interval workings of the knee, to find a way to create this. But see, can you keep the knee still? Can you keep it from moving? You might even want to peek. What could you do without the knee moving at all? In a moment, we'll free the knee to be a little more alive, but I just want to see if you can know the difference. If the knee really doesn't want to move, what does that feel like? What's available in activating the arch without the knee moving? And how smoothly can you begin to let this movement happen, both picking up the arch and delicately placing the whole foot back on the ground? Can you do it without curling the big toe or flaring the toes? With this movement, some people like this particular hint. You know where the big knobby bone is on the outside of your ankle? Sense where that's moving in space. Some people say it's as if they're going to push a button with the ankle bone, as if they're going to reach their ankle bone out to the left to push a button immediately left of the ankle. And then just pause for a moment with both knees bent, both feet are standing. Would you begin to do the same process now with your right foot? And would you actually start by tilting the right knee out to the right so you can feel the weight transfer in your hip, your pelvis, and your back? Feeling the weight transfer across your foot. Feeling the inside edge of the foot peel away. The right foot peels away from the floor as the outside edge takes more of the weight of the leg. If this is the foot that decides it needs some friction under it, place something under your foot to help. Or change the surface. And little by little, would you begin to reduce the movement of the knee and learn about, experiment, improvise your way into this more internal sense of the bones of the lower leg and the foot reorganizing, reconfiguring to activate the arch. You'll probably notice that one of your two legs or feet are more obedient with this idea than the other. So it might be smoother on one side or a bit bumpier or harder to wrap yourself around on the other. And a couple of times, do this with both feet at the same time and see if you can begin to choose for yourself. If you had to say you're more fluent with this idea on one foot, which one would it be? Remember, the knees don't go very much. They shift, but they don't tilt out to the side very much. Now with both feet. Wonderful. So when you're ready, would you roll to your side and come up to sit? Taking your time to come into a seated position. Go ahead and put the sole of the foot, the one that you felt listened to the movement a little bit more, on the floor. So the one that was a bit more facile with this, stand it on the floor with the knee bent, and then the other leg can go anywhere. So your two arms can go anywhere. Just find a way to be comfortable standing one foot on the floor and the rest of yourself just as comfortable as possible and seated. And you can improvise. If you want to change your configuration as we go along, please do. The standing leg can change positions to go in front of the other leg that's not standing. The one that's not standing can poke underneath the bridge of the standing leg. That's also possible. And in this configuration, would you start to activate the arch? Would you do this little movement of reaching your ankle to the side and feeling the inside edge, the arch of the foot peeling away from the floor as you bring more weight to the outside edge? And lightly minimize the movement of the knee, although it can shift a little bit. And now you can see yourself, can't you? You can actually watch your ankle bend and twist a little bit out to the side so you can see the arch of your foot come up. Make the movement quite a bit smaller so you can make it very smooth and very quiet. Very much under your control. So often when we do unusual functions within ourselves, we tend to hurl ourselves into them, and we want to minimize the sense of that and maximize your chance of learning something really detailed about yourself. Now, if you could please get a free hand and place it somewhere on top of your standing knee. Just touch the knee. And on the outside of the knee, about 2 or 3 inches down the kneecap, you're going to find a knobby bone. I'd like you to go looking for the head of your fibula. It's a bumpy little thing. If you want help finding it, I can tell you where the base of your fibula is, and you can go all the way up from there. So the base of the fibula is by the ankle bone that we were using to press a button. All the way down at the bottom, touch your outside ankle bone. If you could imagine following that all the way up your leg to your knee, there's a really bumpy place below and to the outside front of the knee. It's really to the outside. And a couple of times, make a more dramatic arching of the foot. Reach your ankle way sideways, peeling the inside arch way away. Can you feel that the bone up there gets to move? Not just if the knee is moving, but sort of within your knee. There's a kind of twisting or moving up there. I would love it now if you can minimize the activity again and go much, much smaller. And look for a subtle relationship when you move your ankle and increase your arch. Can you feel that the head of the fibula goes somewhere? It migrates around inside your knee. And would you describe the direction it goes to yourself? Where in the world does this thing go? Can you feel it's a kind of twisting? It goes down around to the outside a bit. And let's do the other leg. Anyone who needs a break, you won't miss anything if you need to lie down for a minute. If you want to keep this running, you can also pause it anytime you need. You can lie down and take a break. But if you're comfortable, go ahead and switch your legs over. And put your hand on your knee. Go fishing for the head of your fibula. You'll have to push into yourself a little bit here, but generally it's pretty near the surface, and it really is a knobby little thing. It's got a kind of bumpiness to it. If you go too high, you get into some tendons and some ligaments, and if you go too low, you get into the body of the muscles of the lower leg. But somewhere right near the knee, a couple inches to the outside of the kneecap, there's this bumpy thing. And if you're having trouble finding it, just begin to activate the arch a little more dramatically at first. You'll feel that your knee internally reconfigures a little bit. So get clear on where that is and see how small, how subtly you can move the foot and ankle and still feel the twist through the lower leg. This reconfiguring in the knee. And little by little dial back the intensity and see if you can turn up the sensitivity. You might even pull with your fingers in the direction the head of the fibula moves. Pull on your fibula. See if you can help your bones move in your foot. For people that have severe injury in this area or in the ankles, or people who are very flat-footed and have issues with arching, it's very possible to begin to learn how to control your own arch by manipulating your knee. Eventually you can do this without having to reach down. When the arch is struggling, you can internally shift and adjust your knee once you get more comfortable with this. So please let that go and lie down for a moment. So you may know that the bones of our forearms twist around each other. A keyboardist, a pianist, or a typist, they all have the palms facing the floor when they're seated. And in that position, the bones of the arms are somewhat crossed over each other. And if they turn their palms to the ceiling, and you can try this if you want, your eyes can be closed, but just feel, roll the palms more downward toward the floor. The forearms have a particular shape and feeling. If you open the palms, it's called supinating the palms. And the easiest way to remember this is if you put your hands together, and this way you could ask for some soup in a bowl. By supinating the palms, the forearms untwist a little bit. And there's an analogous movement in the lower legs. It's just much less dramatic because the bones of the lower arms were designed for flexibility and lifting things, and the bones of the legs are designed for weight bearing. But the bones in the legs can do a little bit of the same kind of thing, so you might even have fun a couple of times turning your palms up as you think about activating your arches in your legs. You may even want to draw them together in your imagination. So as you bring your palms up, go ahead and arch the feet at the same time. So go ahead, try this. Actually, if you want, you can stand the feet and try it that way. So everyone go ahead and stand your feet if you can. Wherever your arms are on the floor, roll them out a little bit. Roll the palms down to the floor first. Maybe even push the arches of your feet into the floor a little bit more. And then open everything from the middle up, away from the floor. So you activate both arches, both arms roll out to the side, rolling the hands out to the side as you roll the outside edges of your feet. Can you sense that there's some kind of neurological analogy? These functions are very closely related in your brain. There's an evolutionary link here. Go ahead and let your arms relax once again. Find a secure place to put your feet on the floor, again under your knees at the width of your hips, and just press into the floor with your feet a few times, very lightly. Begin to add a little more each time. And feel yourself as the feet are on the floor, which doesn't yield. Feel yourself yield. Your pelvis will float, and then lower it back down gently. So do this a couple of times and notice, how do your feet meet the floor? Again, press the feet into the floor and notice how your feet meet the floor as your pelvis lifts. And notice the challenge after exploring this interesting little arching a few times in a few different ways. What's the weight of your pelvis like? How does your back respond? And not thinking about it too hard, but just sensing, did anything get lighter or easier or more connected? And would you do the following, please? Would you push slightly? You can even emphasize or imagine that you can emphasize the ball of the fourth toe a little bit toward the outside of the feet, that you could use that to activate this arching function. The inside edge, the inside ball of the foot doesn't leave the floor. You don't stand on the outsides of the feet, but you emphasize a little more this region of the front of the foot at the fourth toe. And lift your pelvis a bit higher as you do this. And then lower your pelvis, and as you lower it, can you have the idea that you lower it vertebrae by vertebrae? That you put your back down as your pelvis heads to the floor, one link of a chain at a time. Sometimes we think about the vertebrae as links of a chain. So one link at a time, lower your vertebrae back to the ground. This may take a little time to find, but it's worth it for the fluidity and the facility that's needed in your back and in your torso. I'd like you to relate it to what the feet are doing today. More or less, the feet are relaxed. It's just a tiny movement and a little thinking and effort toward the outside edge of your foot as you push. You push the feet very symmetrically and you lift your pelvis. And when you lower it down, lower it very slowly. Give yourself time to let your spine be long, folding down into the floor, one vertebrae at a time. And that's just the idea, that's just the intention at first. Many will find that there are areas of the back or groups of vertebrae that are like rusted together, and that they go down as a whole or as a unit. See if after a few movements you can get a little more articulate in your back. So the feet are nice and secure. You could probably float there when you begin to put the pelvis down in this area where it feels like they're rusted together. So float a little bit where your back struggles to soften or to yield, going vertebrae by vertebrae, giving yourself time to find the muscles that need to lengthen if you're going to put yourself down in this articulate way in the spine. And then please, when you've had enough, put your pelvis down, let your legs go long and rest. There's some very interesting connections in the way we use our feet and our arches, as you felt in your ankles and lower legs and knees, and the function of our hip joints and lower backs. Some athletics teachers and coaches talk about a universal athletic posture. So if you pictured someone standing at the ready for an Olympic event or sport, imagine that they're standing in such a way that the arches of the feet are collapsed and the knees point a little more towards each other. What kind of sense of readiness does that give you if you imagine this? What kind of shape or readiness would they have in their back? So try this if you want as you rest. Roll your legs a little more toward each other. Roll your feet in towards each other. See if you can feel that the hip joints in the back change a bit. As you roll the legs together, you can sort of imagine pressing the floor with the big ball of the feet, the first toe balls, and see the shape that that makes for you in your back. And relax from that and rest. And now, imagine an athlete standing in this more universal shape of ready. And imagine a buoyancy in the legs, maybe even a slight bow-leggedness with the knees a little bit more in connection with the ground through the outside of the feet. Imagine the readiness in that shape of the back, in that feeling of the pelvis. Imagine for yourself if you were going to begin some kind of athletic activity. Can you sense some potential energy there? Can you feel the frame? That person would be ready to do something powerful. We'll feel a lot more of this as we go along. Let's see what happens if we do something else on this idea. Would you please bend your knees and stand your feet? And I'd like you to learn something about yourself. So leaving one leg standing and one foot standing, would you tilt the other knee way out to the side as if you wanted to lay it on the floor? And can you find a way to let yourself lay one leg down on the floor in this way? It's okay if you need support here too as well, and I'm going to demonstrate this in a chair. So take one leg, either leg is fine, and you just go ahead and lay it out as far as you can to one side, in such a way that the outside edge of your foot is in contact with the floor, but the inside edge will have peeled away. The sole of your foot will be facing the opposite wall on the other side. And bring it back and just feel how that is on this side. Can you find a way to do it on the other side? And it's okay if it slips or it moves a little bit. But find out which side is easier. So which side is more comfortable like this? And you decide for yourself. So take the leg that's more comfortable and lay it down on the floor and take a minute for your body to code it, to figure it out. You can let the leg that's lying on its outside edge, the foot that's lying on the outside edge, move closer to your midline if it wants. And then you can, with the standing sole of the foot, push and shift into your pelvis a little bit just to make yourself comfortable. Because we're going to do something a bit unusual with this, and I want you to have a place to return to on your own that's easy. Now the standing foot, the one that's standing on the floor, I'd like you to literally step on the inside edge of your side lying foot. And this is why it might be good to have it lying closer to the midline if you need to. So take the standing foot, place it right on the other foot. Quite literally, step on your other foot. Put your heel on the inside edge of your other heel and step on the front of your standing foot on the other edge. The standing foot actually steps on the other foot, on the inside edge. Now in this configuration of the 2 feet, do you need to move at all so you can be more comfortable like this? Where would you like your arms? And as you get more comfortable, would you wash your own foot with your standing foot? So wash the inside edge of the foot that's lying down, the instep of your foot with the standing foot with the other one. Get used to how these two can relate to each other and begin to settle into a place where you balance the heel on the inside edge of the side lying heel, and then you seek to place the 4th metatarsal of the standing foot on the inside edge of the side lying foot So you can balance heel on top of heel and balance quite precisely. Fourth metatarsal of the standing foot aiming at the inside edge of the ball of the side-lying foot. And once you've come to this situation, this is our home for a moment. So if you slip out of it, you can always softly return. Could you do the following? Could you activate the arch of your standing foot? Could you activate the ankle sideways and think of increasing the arch of the standing foot? And it's as if you will drip the outside edge of the standing foot down over the edge of the side-lying foot. As if you could drip it down toward the floor, as if it could drop. And then you stand the foot again, balanced on your own foot. And then several times do the same movement. It's the same thing we've been experimenting with, but we gave you an extremely unstable surface to do it on, a very dynamic, unusual surface to do it with, which means you're going to be asked to find more control of yourself here. So your brain is sorting out how to balance on this weird surface and how to feel the surfaces together and still see if you can achieve this movement of the ankle, the twisting of the head of the fibula at your knee, a little backwards and a little upwards, a little bit around the outside of your standing leg. If it helps, you can lean forward to lift the head so you can find your own fibula if you want, and then lie down to make yourself comfortable. Look for it in your own perception if you haven't already found it. Do this movement many times of activating the arch, feeling that you could push a button with the outside edge of the standing ankle. Always looking for comfort, always shifting around if you need to be more comfortable. And with the same foot, could you find the opposite movement? Could you purposefully drop your arch instead of lifting? So flatten the arch as if you were trying to give the big ball toe of the foot to the floor. So you roll over your foot in both directions. So activate the arch and then flatten and drop the arch. And go back and forth a few times. And through all of it, your knee tries to stay standing up, so you have an unusual twisting and shifting as you go through this whole range. Twisting in the lower leg. And it's fine to take a rest in any position and come back to this at any time. Can you do it without the knee moving far? If the knee stays standing and you find a way to flatten the arch a little bit or bring the big toe down on the side-lying foot, and alternatively, you could reach the outside edge of the standing foot over the sole of the side-lying foot. And then let it be, lengthen your legs. Remember the configuration you just had of your two legs. And rest for a moment. And by the way, in resting, how do your legs lie now? What's the signature? What's the sensory evidence of having just done this unusual movement? It could be that one hip joint feels a bit pulled open. It could be that one lower leg, foot, or ankle, one side of the back or pelvis is getting used to all this unusual activity of the foot and leg. What can you feel that tells you what you were just doing? What can you feel in your lower back, on one side and on the other? And when you're ready for a bit more, I'd like you to take your legs and arrange them in exactly the opposite fashion. So whichever one was standing before, now tilt that leg way out to the side and take a moment to get comfortable like that. Start from both knees bending and then tilt one out to the side, or you can do it that way. And then once you get there, just step on your own foot. See if you can be at ease in stepping on the outside of your foot. Again, if you're in a chair, you just tilt your knee to the outside, maybe move the foot a little closer to the midline, and you just step on your own foot. And then wash them together a little bit. You can wash the standing foot as if you were trying to clean the side-lying foot. How many ways can you get the surfaces of these two feet together? And start to settle in, balancing the heel of the standing foot on the outside edge of the standing foot. And aim your fourth metatarsal of the standing foot right at the inside edge of the lying foot. And you might have to fish for it. You might have to rub your toes against the other toes so you know which one is which. Do this to the best of your ability. It might be unclear which toe is there, but do the best you can. And then again, keeping the standing knee standing, activate the arch of the standing foot. See if you can move the ankle a bit sideways and increase the height of the arch. Can you keep the toes relaxed and do that a few times? Sensing the movement of the ankle and the knee, thinking of the head of the fibula. And since we've done this movement for since we've done this for a while now, can you put your attention on some more subtle things? Maybe we can refine the image a bit more. What happens in your hip joint of the standing leg? What happens in your lower back? And you can begin to alternate, dripping the outside edge of the standing foot towards the floor, which means lifting the arch, with exactly the opposite movement, lifting the edge of the standing foot and dropping the arch towards the floor. You can roll your foot as fully as possible over the side-lying foot. Go back and forth through the full function, whatever is comfortable. Feel the twisting of your leg, the reconfiguring in your knee, and on up yourself. Do you feel a shifting in your pelvis, your lower back? Maybe you could simultaneously keep these curiosities in your attention and once again find your breathing. Your abdominal, easy breath. Easy in the pelvic floor and the back. Easy in the waistline. Letting that exist while you explore this unusual thing. How smoothly can you transition from one side to the other, shifting the weight across? Can you feel the implications in your balance? Your leg, your hip, your back, they all have to change shape a bit. And please let that go and lengthen your legs if comfortable and rest. And what are these lingering sensations? You have sort of a kinesthetic instant replay. What do you feel as you rest that's a little bit different than the last time you rested? Or from the beginning of the lesson? Where is your attention called? So often our attention when we're at rest, when there's not a lot of stimulation coming in, it can go to what pains us or troubles us. It could be physical or emotional pain. But I wonder if your attention is called to things that are simply interesting or pleasant. Maybe it's called in multiple directions. Maybe there are some discomforts, but listen to the things that have their own draw on your curiosity, that have an intriguing nature. It's a very raw way to talk about learning. And facilitating that kind of curiosity is one of our primary jobs here. It's what Feldenkrais is all about. It's one of the most lovely things we can do for ourselves, training ourselves to look for the more quiet, refined sensations, emotions in our lives that can actually lead us to learn new things, even when there's a lot louder sensations coming from the inside environment and the outside environment. We can tune in this way. So please go ahead and bend your knees and stand your feet. Stand both feet. Take a moment to pause like this and just relate through your feet to the floor. What are they like now? What does the floor feel like? And without lifting, without pressing your feet, without lifting your pelvis, imagine doing so. Imagine rolling both feet inwards toward the balls of the big toes. Imagine holding that position and lifting your pelvis. As you imagine, sense your breathing and picture the weight of your pelvis. And then let go of that image and just imagine a subtle emphasis, a twist on your lower leg so that you can imagine or emphasize the fourth metatarsals engaging the floor, and imagine lifting the pelvis in this way. In your imagination, sense its weight and sense your breathing. And then physicalize that. Would you go ahead and lift your pelvis into the air now with the slight sense of emphasizing the fourth metatarsals relative to the floor? And then put it down. And just pick it up and put it down and notice its weight. Notice how high you can lift the pelvis. Have the idea of lowering it slowly and letting the back articulate into the floor. Of course, it's always great in any Feldenkrais lesson. If something's calling you to rest, you just rest. And the next time you bring the pelvis back down, go ahead and roll to your side and sit up again. And when you arrive, could you make yourself comfortable with putting the soles of the feet together? The soles of the feet will face each other, as if hands clapping together, letting your knees out to the sides, leaning back on your hands behind you if you're not in a chair. So put your weight backwards on your hands, lean on your hands, put the soles of your feet together. There are a lot of options here, even if it's just difficult to notice. How close do you want your heels to your body? If you let the heels go further from you, is it easier or harder? And how close do you want your hands to you? What's the easiest possibility or configuration for you? And can you rest in this position and just relax the feet? The outside edges of the feet might be touching more than the inside edges. It's quite possible the inside edges aren't touching. And in this configuration, could you activate both arches? Could you think of lifting both arches away from each other and gently pressing the outside edges or the fourth metatarsal region towards each other with the feet? It's like you're asking for some soup with your feet. It's like you're opening the arches of the feet so that someone could pour something in there. Now, what do the muscles of the legs do when you do this? How do you ignite in your leg muscles when you activate your arches? Where do their knees go in the altitude of the room? Could you close your eyes and rest your head in some position above your spine? Could you rest yourself with your head in some kind of neutral relationship with your spine? Because we're all folded down looking at our feet, which is really great for a while. But let's get our heads and backs really comfortable now. And as you do the movement, what do you begin to feel up into your hip joints and in your lower back? And could you please begin to push your belly, not the shoulders, but the belly, out into the world as if you're going to push your belly over your pubic bone as you roll over the sits bones. Let your eyes be closed. Let your head stay atop your spine. And then do the opposite. Could you pull your belly in and roll back on your sits bones a little bit? And just quietly roll through that range a couple of times, just doing what's comfortable. As you push your belly forward, could you start to activate your arches? And when you pull the belly in a bit, you can relax that arching. Let's try reversing that. As you pull your belly in and round your back, could you activate your arches? And as you push your belly forward, can you just relax your feet? Which one makes the most sense? Which one fits you better? And again, go back to pushing the belly out as you activate the arches a couple of times. And then please let that go and lie down on your back and rest. And when you're ready, go ahead and bring your legs to stand, bend your knees and stand your feet. And with a light engagement of these arches, with just a light little bit, about 10% of what you can actually do, lightly engage the arches of the feet. Engage both outside edges of the feet slightly. All the toes are resting it on the floor. You're doing it that lightly. With that shape, could you begin to lift your pelvis into the air and sense the weight? 10% of arching in the feet, and you lift the pelvis. How does that feel now compared to before? When you put your pelvis down, purposefully flatten your feet into the floor. Collapse your arches. Your knees might migrate a bit. And then lift your pelvis into the air with these flat feet and see how the weight is then. And put the pelvis down and activate the arches again. See how the weight of your pelvis is then. And the next time, try it again with flat feet. Flatten the arches. Try lifting the pelvis like this. What is that like? When is it heavier? And then put the pelvis down when you're ready. And put the arms by your head lightly, anywhere they're comfortable. It could be like the letter Y, or it can be up by your head. Anywhere your arms and shoulders are comfortable and relaxed and still on the floor. So if you need to adjust to make more room for yourself, you might want to scoot down on your mat if you have things behind you. Just getting your arms straight above you. So you want the elbows straight, feet in standing. Feet are still standing. So the legs are standing, you're in this Y shape where the arms are up in the direction of above the head. Would you keep the feet lightly active as it suits you, as it helps you, and begin to lift your pelvis into the air a sustainable amount and float there? Rest as best as you can with your pelvis in the air. So your pelvis is in the air and you just rest like that. Hold the pelvis in the air if you can. Keeping some distance between the knees, can you sway your two knees to the left and sway your two knees to the right? And notice what your feet do against the floor as you do this. Feel the shifting across of the 2 feet. Do you get more onto the inside edge and more onto the outside edge? And would you want to do something with the arches of your feet so that within this movement you never get to an inside edge? Could you do that? I'll let you think about this one for a second, and then I'll be very clear what I mean about it. You never get to any inside edge. It doesn't mean that you do anything dramatic with the toes. They can still rest very softly near the floor. And then go ahead and put the pelvis down for a moment. And imagine the following. You can enact it when you're ready. In a moment, you'll lift the pelvis. You'll sway the knees to your left, and I'd like you to press a little bit with the head of the 4th metatarsal of the right foot. So let's go ahead and do that. So go ahead and lift the pelvis and sway the knees to the left. Once you arrive, press your 4th metatarsal of the right foot into the floor. Let go of the pushing, come back through the middle with the knees, and then push the left 4th metatarsal into the floor as you sway your knees to the right. And could you go back and forth, always engaging with your rear foot, the foot that's behind you, that propels the movement of the pelvis? Look a little different in a seated position, but just see what you can come up with here as you instead of swaying the knees. I would think more about pressing into the 4th metatarsal and just feeling how you can shift there. The pelvis here might slide and glide a bit instead of being lifted. And put your pelvis down and rest for a moment now. Let's try one more little thing. I would love it if we could do it in the same position, maybe 2 or 3 times. Go ahead and lift the pelvis and notice, do the knees go away from you? Do the knees start to go towards the wall that the toes are pointing at? So go ahead and lift your pelvis and see, where do your knees go in the room? And would you make a gentle effort next time you lift not to let the knees migrate over the feet? Don't let the knees get away from you at all. It means that the force is going to have to go somewhere else. So if your knees can't get away from you, that means you'll be a little bit more driven up the length of yourself. Think if someone stood against your knees and didn't let them budge, even a little bit. Where would the weight go as you lift the pelvis? Can you drive the crown of your head up a little bit in the direction above you? And with that idea, with the idea of not moving the knees like this, can you lift your pelvis just like that? And sway the knees a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. And have this idea of the pushing foot, or the foot that's behind the movement, the propelling foot. So if your pelvis is going to the left, it's the right foot that's pushing. If the pelvis is going to the right, it'll be the left foot that pushes. And keep that always staying really clearly engaged with that 4th metatarsal. Find the power that you can bring up through yourself by pressing through this part of the feet. And if you were to turn this into a reaching of your arms, if you were, which arm would get longer and when? If you were going to do this strange thing of reaching out on the floor above your hands, which movement helps which arm get longer? And if you're curious about this and you haven't figured it out yet, it's a nice moment to press a kinesthetic record button, or you can just play this again later. So revisit this lesson with the image another time. And if you're not sure of an answer for yourself yet, that's great. That's just another learning opportunity. That means it will be valuable to pursue it later. Let your arms go down to your sides. Let your legs come down long. Rest. and sense what's there. Sense how the heels relate to the ground, the calf muscles. Is there space behind your knees? Is it the same left and right? Is it the same as the beginning, or has it changed? How does the pelvis lie? How does the back lie? What's the feeling of the left and right side of your lower back? How did the chest, the shoulders, the head, and the arms all accept the support of the floor now compared to before? And would you bend your knees and bring the soles of your feet to stand? Would you roll all the way through lying on one side or the other to come to sitting and eventually to standing? Taking your time to come up. Once you arrive, just come to stand and relate all of this to what we do other than resting on the floor. And just stand for a moment. Where is the weight overall on your feet? More to the left or to the right? Is it more toward the heels or the balls of the feet? What about those tripods compared to before? How is your awareness of the arches of your feet and the outside edges of the fourth metatarsal area? And would you please take these feet for a little walk around the room and just see how you walk? As you walk, notice how your hips, your back, and your knees relate to your feet and the pressures of the floor, the pressures of turning in the room. For a few steps, would you purposefully drop your arches? Would you give your arches to the floor as you walk? Like you're flat-footed. Feel that. Have a sense of flat feet. What does it do to your walk? What does it do to your sense of yourself? And then activate, just lightly activate those arches and take a few more steps. And I hope that you'll continue playing like this a little bit today and any day that you visit this lesson. You can do it standing, you can do it seated, you can do it walking. I hope you'll look at this range of ideas for the legs and the feet. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this lesson on activating the arches, and I hope to see you again soon. I'm Katie Garth. Thanks.